Hi, my name is Josh with NorthshoreCommercialDoor.com. I am here today to do an installation of the ZAP Residential Model Operator 8825-R4. From beginning to end, we're going to install the operator today on a 16x8 sectional overhead door. And I have here displayed in front of me all the components that are included with the operator right out of the box. You do have the complete motor assembly with Bowden cable, power cords, wire harnesses. All that is pre-installed, ready to go for you. The control box with the one button on the front, your mounting hardware and brackets, also manual release lever to release the door from the opener in case of power failure, and you can run the door up and down by hand. They do include a bag of chain for you as well, so if you have a high lift door or full vertical lift door, you can get the manual release lever closer to the ground within reach. Safety beams or photo cells are included with the operator, ascending and receiving style, and of course the mounting brackets. And you do also get a very nice set of transmitters or remotes. 2 4-button transmitters, either keychain style, visor clip, and even a mounting bracket to mount one on the wall near the walk-in door of the home. So that does act as your wireless wall button. And of course, like with any ZAP model operator, you get a set of installation instructions step by step with color-aided photos and an operating manual for future needs as well. So here shortly we're going to start the installation of the operator, and do keep in mind a list of tools that will be required. Your standard drill, whether that's electric corded or cordless with a 1/4-inch drill bit, flathead Phillips head screwdriver, and even a Phillips head attachment for the drill is very helpful. An Allen wrench is included for adjusting and tightening the set screws on the motor head assembly when you fasten it to the spring shaft. A set of wire cutters, wire strippers for wiring of the safety beams or photo cells, and a socket set or a wrench set as well for tightening down the components to the track, as well as your mounting bracket. So a very simple around the house setup of tools that will be required, nothing major by any means. So ZAP definitely does keep it simple for you. Here in a minute, we'll go ahead and get started with the installation, and we appreciate you watching. Thank you. Okay, first step with installing the ZAP Residential 8825-R4 operator is we're going to take the motor assembly, which I have here in my hand, and you will see on the back side that we have a threaded bolt that we are going to loosen out of the motor assembly, because that's where we're going to fit our mounting bracket. In this particular bracket with the multiple holes that are on one side, this should be the side that should be fastened to the motor assembly itself. The other end is for mounting it to the end bearing plate or horizontal track mount, whichever is best suited in your case. So I'm going to go ahead and set the motor assembly down. Now we're going to use one of these holes here, whichever is best going to be suited for the operator configuration. And I'm going to go ahead and reinsert the threaded bolt that I removed originally from the motor assembly. And like I said, these holes here, it just depends on your application as far as which hole is going to be best suited in your case. It really is. So you don't want to tighten this down too tight yet. We want to leave a little play there, so that way we've got room for adjustment if need be. Okay, so we fitted the motor assembly to our spring shaft, and I've adjusted the bracket that came with the operator to best fit our needs in this application. And luckily enough, I have an exposed hole here with the horizontal track mount that I'll be able to use to fasten that bracket to. But first we're going to mark our shaft with a small drill bit. And before we go ahead and drill a hole through the one side of the shaft to drive our long set screw, if you recall, through so we can pin it to the spring shaft. So I'm going to go ahead and mark the shaft here first with a smaller drill bit. That's basically all we're going to need there. Just enough to make a mark so we can drill it with our... And then we can go ahead and slide this back off. And the 1/4-inch drill bit is going to be used quite a bit here with our installation today, so which is nice, just one size is going to do all for us here today. And our hole is through, and we're going to go ahead and refit the motor assembly up on the spring shaft. Make sure our brackets turn the way we need it. Now I'm going to take our long set screw that we talked about here earlier, and we're going to go ahead and drive that into the hole. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and fasten the bracket that's included with the operator to our horizontal track mount. In this case, we already had an exposed hole, so we are very simply able to go ahead and put our bolt through, like so. And then again, that was included with the operator lock washer and nut, and fasten the bracket or motor assembly in turn to the track mount, so in turn the operator can't twist as it's turning the door shaft. That's the purpose of this. So everything does fasten right to the door shaft. Nothing fastens to the wall or the header area. Everything's on the spring shaft and then your bracket holding it here. Those are the only two mounting points. And we do have the operator securely mounted now to the spring shaft as well with our long set screw, since it was a hollow shaft. So we are now going to mount the black Bowden cable that extends down from the motor assembly. This is what provides tension on our belt. At the end of the black portion of the cable, as you can see, is an L-shaped bracket, 2 bolts with the nuts, and those are supplied already in the bracket for you. So to mount it to the vertical door track, sometimes you have exposed holes in the track that you can already utilize. In our case, the slot that's there is just not going to work for us in this particular application. So I'm going to remove the bolts and nuts from this L-shaped bracket, and we're going to position it up against the vertical door track, and we're going to drill a couple 1/4-inch holes so we can secure it to the track. And you will notice that the bolts that come with are a nice rounded, similar to a track bolt, so the rollers can still pass by those and not catch. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my drill with a 1/4-inch drill bit, get this aligned about where it needs to be, and go ahead and drill our 2 holes into the door track. And I'm going to go ahead and mount one of those so we don't get off on the second hole when we are drilling that. And we're just going to go ahead and hand tighten these for now. We'll secure them up with a Allen wrench and a standard wrench here shortly. So there's our first one, and then that way it's going to nicely line us up for our second hole that we're going to drill right now. So that is our second hole. We'll insert the second and last bolt to mount the L-shaped bracket here to the vertical door track. Okay, now we're at the portion where we're going to mount our manual release lever. Mounting the manual release lever is one of the most crucial parts of any ZAP operator installation. I've seen it so many different times where the manual release lever is mounted improperly, and in turn we don't get sufficient belt tension, which then the operator doesn't function properly. So this is one of the more crucial parts of the installation. The black Bowden cable, as you can see, I've got some nice slack in that yet, which that's always nice, a little slack there. And the first rule of thumb with the manual release lever is you can see the hook on the lever is threaded. I'm going to turn the hook out. So most of the threads are up top, which is going to allow us some adjustment down the road because the belt and the cable do stretch out over time. So you will need to readjust this. In a residential application, once a year is sufficient. In a commercial application, a couple times a year, such as spring and fall time, would be good times to readjust the lever. And how we adjust that and where it should be set, I'm going to describe here in just a moment. First, what we're going to do is the hook on the end of the manual release lever does connect at the end of the silver cable, and that this component is called the D-shackle. And you can see it's just hanging here now. And what we're going to do in order to know where to mount this to the vertical door track and where to have this positioned is you just hold it up to the vertical door track, and you kind of want to gauge it with both hands. You want your lever to start getting tight, the red lever, at a 90-degree angle, such as I have pointed out right here. You can see we're starting to get a good amount of pressure, and it's pulling the silver cable down at about 90 degrees. So that's basically where we're going to mount our manual release lever. So I'm going to go ahead and secure the manual release lever to the vertical door track. In fact, in this application, I already have a hole in the vertical track for us for one. I'm going to go ahead and drill the other hole so we can mount both here. Okay, so I'm going to acquire the hardware, the bolts and nuts that are supplied with the operator, and secure the manual release lever, and then we will go through the proper setting procedure of this, the fine-tune adjustment, if you will. Okay, we're at the point where we're going to mount the manual release lever to our vertical door track. We've got both holes drilled into the track, supplied hardware with the operator, 2 threaded bolts, 2 8mm nuts, and we're going to put the bolt head through the track and into the manual release lever and secure it on the manual release lever side or outside of the door track with the supplied 8mm nuts. So I'm going to go ahead, in my case here, I have to raise the door some to get to the bottom bolt, and we're going to go ahead and get this fastened up. Okay, so we have our manual release lever mounted to the vertical door track. I did snug down the bolt and nut setup here, and I've reconnected the hook to the D-shackle at the end of our cable. And as you can see, we start getting a very good amount of pressure here at about the 90-degree angle or straight out from the track, and that's where we want it. I've actually fine-tuned, adjusted it just a little bit there after we mounted it. And obviously, since I turned the hook all the way out before we started, we had room for adjustment in order to do that. So with it set there, I'm very happy with the tension that we're getting. I'm going to go ahead and just hand tighten is all you need to do, the nut at the base of the hook here. And then I'm going to go ahead and clamp that down, and that does lock into place very nicely. And that's given us the ample amount of tension on our belt that we're going to need. So the operator has that in order to turn the spring shaft. Leaving that too loose, obviously the belt's going to slip up top and throw the operator out of calibration. So very important here, part of any ZAP operator. Okay, so we are at the point now where we are going to mount the control box for the ZAP residential operator, which I have here. I've loosened the 4 Phillips head screws so I can remove the lid. And you'll see on the back side here, let me flip it around, the circuitry inside, and we'll be getting to that here further in the installation video. So I'm going to go ahead and set the lid aside for now. And we're going to go ahead and mount this on the wall like so. And this here is where we can pull in any wiring such as safety eyes or photo cell wiring. Our power cord that runs to the motor assembly, etc. will coming in here through the back. You can see that this is recessed to allow that to happen. And we've got mounting holes right here already for us. So I'm going to easily just center this on our wall for our application. Normally about 4 to 5 feet, somewhere in there off the ground. Of course, you can mount this anywhere you like, for that matter. And I've got a little torpedo level here that we will try to level it out and as best we can. And I will mark our holes for drilling. And here's our 4 holes that we're going to need to drill. Now in this application, They do include hardware for you. We've got some drywall anchors and the Phillips head screws. So this hardware is included. So I'm just going to do a very small drill bit so then I can push in these anchors. In this application here, we have a hollow area behind here, so we will want to use the anchors for this. Like so. We will go ahead and press in our anchors into the holes that we've drilled, and then in turn we can put our control box back case back up and get that forced in there. Okay, so we've gone ahead and drilled 4 holes here, and I did press in the drywall or sheetrock anchors that were included with the operator, since we have a hollow area here. And I'm going to go ahead and hold our control box up here, and with the supplied Phillips head screws, I'm going to go ahead and start those and screw those in to fasten our control box. And we're nice and solid, and we should be relatively level as well. Perfect. At this point, we can go ahead and start routing our motor harness cable that is supplied with the operator hanging down, coming out of the ZAP motor assembly. And we can easily route this through like so. And you can go ahead and pull a little bit extra through there. Now our photocell wiring, same thing. Wires coming for that will poke through the back as well. And it's very nice that they left that as a recess so you can easily get behind it to feed your wiring in. And aside from the motor harness cable that comes down from the motor, which is our larger white colored cord, and the photocell or safety beam wires, that's really, in this application, all the wiring that we are going to need to feed through the back of this control box. Okay, so we have our photocell wire or safety beam wiring stripped at the end. Ready to go here. I've got the lid of the control box right here, and on the back side, as we showed before, this is your circuit board, and inside here is a 5-hole plug. And each hole is labeled on the green part of the circuit board, and our top 2 holes is where we're going to terminate our photocell or safety beam wiring. We have safety plus, and then we have safety minus. And the photocells that we're going to be connecting here in a short bit are not polarity sensitive. So basically it doesn't matter what wire goes in each hole. As long as you have 1 wire from each eye, safety eye, into each of these 2 holes. We will go ahead and secure those up. And what's nice about the ZAP product is that you can remove the plugs, and it's a very small flathead screwdriver to adjust those and tighten down our wiring. So, like so. And you always want to give them a little pull to make sure that they're not going to come loose by any means. We want to make sure they're nice and tight. We're going to pull these back here just a little bit more to give us some more room to work. There we are. And the last 2 wires will go together into that second hole right next to the other one. We do have them both fed in there. And we will go ahead and tighten this. Nice and tight. Nothing coming loose. Wires aren't touching each other, so we're in good shape. So we're going to go ahead and plug this back in. And you want to carefully make sure that you fit it back into those rails so it does fit nice and tight. We'll go ahead and snap it. And then the last thing that we need to do is connect our motor harness cable. And up here at the top, as you can see, it's a 4-hole receptacle which matches the end of the motor harness cable, being also a 4-hole receptacle. And it does have a little clip, so it will latch into place once we plug this in. And there we are. Now the one other thing I wanted to point out is the direction of the motor. You can determine the direction of the motor in 2 ways. You can raise the door halfway in the opening, press the button on the front lid, and see whether it's the open or the closed light, which are on the circuit board here that lights up, and know if you got the motor direction correct. And if it's not, it's very easy to change that. There's two dip switches here on an orange block. The bottom one is labeled auto close, as that is a feature of the residential operator where it can automatically close after a set amount of time when the door is opened. But the top button is labeled direction, and that determines the direction of the operator. So an important tip for you is, depending on what side of the door opening the motor assembly and this wall button are mounted, the direction in our case is going to be to the right, but as you can see, you can easily move those. If you're inside the garage looking out and your ZAP product is on the right side, then you want to make sure dip switch number 2, which is labeled direction, is slid to the right as you're holding this, looking at it just like I am here. If it was on the other side of the door, we would slide it to the left, since it was on the left side of the door opening. In our case, again, we're on the right side, so we'll leave the switch as it was by default towards the right. And then again, that's dip switch number 2. Okay, so now we are at the process of mounting our photocell or safety beam brackets, which I have one here in my hand, and it's always good to keep them within 6 inches of the floor is the rule of thumb and what UL requires in a residential application. So as you can see, when we fit our photocell beam through this slot, we are going to be under the 6-inch mark, so we're in good shape. And it's always a good rule of thumb to kind of measure where you're at the bottom of the bracket. And we're pretty close to 4 inches, so we'll make sure that we do the same thing on the other side of the door opening, so that way they automatically align up for us, which will be very, very handy when it comes to aligning the photocells. So we've got that nice and snug. Okay, so we have mounted our safety beam or photocell bracket to the jamb alongside the door, and they're nice and secure. We've mounted the other one on the other side of the door opening, and now we're ready to mount, or fit rather, the photocell or safety beam, one of the two, in the bracket, which is very simply done. As you can see here, it fits through, and you have a lot of room to slide it back and forth depending on the door application that you have. But keep in mind, you always want to stay out in front of the vertical door track and not behind. You have to make sure to stay out in front of that, and about where you have it on this bracket will be the same place that you're going to want to fit it or thereabout on the other side, so that way the infrared ray can project back and forth. And then of course, when the beam is broken, if the door is closing, it will reverse the door back to fully open. That's the safety process. So how this works is the safety beams are included with 2 nuts and 2 washers. And keep in mind, the best thing to first do is to screw on your bracket, or excuse me, the nut on the one side first. You can screw that almost all the way back, and then you're going to want to fit a washer on. Okay, and the washers always go towards the bracket, is how that's going to work. And let me spin this off here real quick. We're going to fit it on this way and keep it go in the same direction rather. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and slide it through there. And again, the washers go close to the bracket, and then the nut on the other side. And that gives you room for adjustment either direction. So we can go ahead and try to fit this back as far as we like to go here, so we don't have too much sticking out, getting in the way for someone to hit that. And then we're going to go ahead and scoot it back here a little bit closer, and then just opposite of each other, tighten those nuts down, and it's nice and secure there in the bracket. Now in our case, we have already ran the safety beam or photocell wire up the door jamb and to the ZAP control box, which we did just terminate our wiring on that here just a couple minutes ago. So this added spool of wire we don't need in this application. You folks might need that depending on the height of the door, etc. Or if you're on the other side of the door opening and need to run your photo eye wire up and over the door opening. So in our case here, we're going to go ahead and trim the extra off, as we don't need that, and we'll go ahead and join our wires together here and wire those up very shortly. Okay, we have completed the installation of our safety beams or photo cells down below on each side of the door opening. We did end up getting a red light on one and a green light on the other when we connected them up and plugged the operator into power. So we're in good shape, and when I break the beam with my hand or my foot, the red light does flash, go out, and then as soon as I remove my hand or foot, the red light comes back on. So I know they're functioning properly. Okay, so we have plugged the motor assembly into power, which is just the standard power outlet in your garage or shed or facility. And you can see the green illuminated button immediately lit up on the front. So we know we have adequate power to the operator. Now, you notice I haven't put the cover back on the front yet, for the fact that in order to set the operator up as far as knowing how far to run the door up and how far to run it back down, since there are no mechanical limits to set on a ZAP model operator, we are going to run it through what we call a calibration or program process. And how we do that is you'll see a large orange program button here down at the bottom. And the first thing we're going to do before I go through and do this is we're going to push and hold the program button. The door is going to run all the way up, and as soon as it reaches where we want it to open and stop, we're going to let off the orange program button. So we're going to go ahead and start that. Now the first thing we need to do though is open the brain up, so to speak, of the ZAP operator, and we're going to put it in a program process. And how we do that is we push and hold the orange program button until we get one beep, then we let off. It's going to continue to beep now, telling us that it is in program mode and it's ready to learn. Now, as you can see, I'm pushing and holding the orange program button in order to get the door all the way up. Now the door reached the fully open position that I wanted it to be at, so I let off the orange program button. Now I'm going to push and hold the program button in again to close the door. Okay, now the next step we're going to do, the second cycle or second time we're opening it, is we're going to press and release the green illuminated button on the front. You'll notice the door is running a little faster this time versus the first cycle. It's not at its normal speed during this calibration process, so don't be alarmed that the door is running slow. Now at this point, the door reached fully opened, and it's going to automatically close on its own. So be patient and just let it close on its own here the second time down. Slows down and reaches fully closed. Now to code in the ZAP transmitters, is they do include two of the nice 4-button remotes, which means you can run up to 4 doors with it. Obviously in our case we just have 1 door, so I'm going to choose the button number 1. And the circuit board in here that has the antenna on it, the curly antenna, is our receiver board. And there is a very small receiving light there that will be coming on red when I push the receiver program button. So I'm going to push and hold the receiver program button until the red light comes on, and there it is. Push and hold the number 1 button, let off, and it flickered to let us know that it is coded in. So now when I push door number 1 or button number 1, it will function the door.